Welcome to the Visual Cast. I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Rem. The Visual Cast is a hybrid podcast where we interview some of the most unique, interesting, high-level, and exciting artists from all over the world. Entering into Season 2, we will be starting a monthly live stream to our paid subscribers. To join in on the live stream with Q&As, polls, and some surprises, click on the join button below. Your subscription will massively support our channel and bring us further to creating a community of like-minded individuals who love, create, and immerse themselves with the visual arts and the visual world. For those unable to join financially, don't worry. The episode, like all of our episodes, will be available on Thursdays for everyone to watch. And if you want to support us, like and subscribe and share with anybody you think will enjoy the podcast. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Now, without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
A very special guest, a highly requested guest, somebody who I did not realize how much I was inspired by until I dove deeper into his projects and Instagram and realized that I actually have been inspired by him for a very long time. Very high level software engineer, very high level touch designer engineer, and yeah, I'm super excited to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the Visual Cast, David Braun.
Hi, Alon. Thanks for having me.
For sure, man. I'm super excited. And I was saying to you just a moment ago how awesome it is to have, such a high level, big brain on the podcast because, not to diminish all the other guests, but all those guys are just dumb artists,
No.
I'm just joking. That was a bad joke. Terrible way to start the podcast. But I'll save it by let's go look at your little bit of your Instagram and kind of your past projects, and just while we're looking, as a high level developer. And as somebody who is, really kind of like at the forefront of software engineer, or I should say maybe audiovisual kind of software, computer science, do you kind of like, are you able to look back over your past and see like how things have developed over time? Being so inside of the thick of it all, do you have a moment to basically like kind of look back and be like, wow, where are we now? Where were we before?
Well, apropos of that, I think just the Pops release is really exciting.
Hell yeah.
I feel that maybe what I was known for, years ago in TouchDesigner, because I haven't been very active in the community recently, but what I was known for is kind of GLSL stuff. And what Pops make possible is all that stuff in a much more easier wire flow traditional TouchDesigner pipeline, whereas what I was doing a long time ago was more GLSL based, compute shader based. And so I feel like I was like wringing the most out of what TouchDesigner could do long back then, maybe. But now it's so much more accessible, and I think that people can do very beautiful things in just Pops now. So I haven't really like used too much of the Pops myself. I played a small role in developing them a few years ago.
No way.
Yeah, in like 2 years ago, I was doing some contract work for TouchDesigner, and so
I did see that. Was that Pops related? Interesting.
Yeah, and some of the OAKD
so
stuff.
Cool. The OAKD stuff.
I'm just really excited.
Responsible for that? Oh wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Glad it's working out well. Yeah, so
the OAKD stuff is like awesome.
I was doing some, kind of compute shader heavy stuff, and I hope that just what I'm seeing now, because I'm still following the TouchDesigner community on social media, is that people are doing amazingly beautiful and creative stuff, and I feel like they don't have to I mean, I'm trying to put it like in praise of the artist. Like they're doing it like in a smart and elegant way, and I feel like I
Mm.
was just having to hack it together
Brute
with
force it.
like compute shader stuff and really difficult
Mm.
stuff. But anyway, I think
Interesting.
I'm not saying it though the way I want to.
No, I think that that's really potent because it's like you said, it's like the beauty of TouchDesigner is that you really can do anything. It's just how hard or difficult is it going to be to do that thing. And again, the beauty of TouchDesigner is that they continuously make those things easier and more accessible, I should say. And I think you're right. The advent of pops really brings like all these kind of very
Yeah,
complex high end things to
well,
what's up?
like take this thing for example.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
this was a shader, and I
yeah.
had
Right.
to allocate new like vertices in a shader and have like a queue where I'm like deleting things and stuff. And
Oh
like
my
this was a
gosh.
very complicated system because I was doing it how many years ago. But now with trail pops, this is so incredibly uh,
Oh,
easy to do.
right.
Like, and there's a company, there's like a simulation here too with like a soft body string that I'm doing too,
Right.
reacting to the mouse, and like this was all. I shouldn't be praising myself or anything, but like
No,
I'm
you
just
should. I mean, this
excited.
is
Uh,
amazing.
the way I want to frame it is that this kind of stuff is easy to do with pops, and I'm
Mm,
so excited that there is now an official experimental release of pops, so that more people
totally.
can be doing uh, art that is like stunning.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I must say, I was in the alpha testers, but I could still not wrap my head around pops. Really, I really tried. I made an effort, but I just could not wrap my head around it. And now that it's an experimental, there's like a flood of tutorials, and I'm so happy that that's happening because now finally I can, I'm smart enough to like look at a project and like deconstruct it and kind of follow the flow, but I'm not smart enough to like look at a project, deconstruct it, and then be able to like figure it out if it's not part of like my forte of whatever I'm already familiar with. So those tutorials are so helpful, and all the educators in the TouchDesigner world are really jumping on it being released now. That it's really exciting because there's, like you said, it's like so much potential. Um, and it's just going to get better and better, right? The more derivative really understand what the community needs and figure out the bugs and figure out, kind of making it more accessible, then, the more and more tools will be released with it and the more and more people will be familiar with it. It's just amazing, and I think Greg said something about this in a not so recent, but maybe like a year ago, we had like a discussion on Music Hackspace. Shout out to Billiam's Music Hackspace, and he was mentioning that like this is like a really big advent for TouchDesigner. They haven't released a new family of operators for like 15 years almost, maybe longer, right? I mean, so it's pretty crazy that we're in the middle of it, right? And like it's happening now, and that the actual operator family is so kind of like and I would love to hear your take on it, but it's like so advanced in terms of like what it actually is, right? It's not like it's not a you know it's not like a data oriented thing, but it kind of is. It's not a texture oriented thing, but it could be. It's like direct GPU kind of compute, which is like what the future of our kind of industry is kind of being going into, right? Like GPUs are so powerful, and TouchDesigner was kind of like you could figure it. Paqueta figured it out with the tops, and you were figuring it out with the GLSL, and all these people are figuring it out with all these different ways. But now it's like here is a direct thing. Um, yeah, what was your role with the pops development? I'd love to hear about that.
Some of the I didn't. I was basically making some of the individual pops, so I didn't really play a role in the larger architecture of pops, like their existence as nodes and how they kind of communicate with very low level operations like GPU stuff. You can think of it as more like a task of writing shaders,
Okay,
but doing it also with C++
interesting,
and GLSL. Um,
interesting.
but I think that uh, some of the features right now in pops that are um, relatively newer to the beta testers that have been using it is that you can kind of write expressions
Mm,
in the parameter node in like a parameter space where you use the value ladder and instead refer to an attribute. And this is kind of
Wow.
an extremely powerful feature where you don't have to go into the code, the GLSL code, to be editing something that is responding to like a per attribute basis of the buffer. And I'm just really excited for people to explore that feature more. I think that the closest analog to it is that when you're using SOPs, there was this obscure feature called fetch stamp, where if
Okay.
you're like using the copy SOP and you have multiple instances of the copy, but you want each copy to do something differently, then you can kind of create this attribute and then you refer to it with this fetch stamp thing.
Interesting.
And this was like a really complicated way of doing per instance transformations in SOP land. But now that kind of operation is just so easy to do with pops. And another example is if you have a transform, you may want to take an attribute and you want the amount of rotation around an axis to be related to some attribute. So in like the transform pop, you can just write an expression referring to the attributes. So if you want your TX to be related to something, then you type in that expression and it just works so magically. So I think that it's like the feature parity relative to SOPs is amazing, but beyond that, just the scriptability where you can kind of write expressions and avoid going into GLSL, it's really, really impressive.
Wow. Such an interesting take on it. I mean, it's like, you know, it's also like a little bit abstract without like seeing it, right? But I think the crux of, like you're saying, like being able to put those expressions inside of the parameters is something that, yeah, like if you were writing shaders, right, you would have to like really think about it really beforehand, like where am I gonna expose something, where am I gonna allow an expression to be. And here it's like the flow of the node-based systems allows that to be a lot more accessible, which is really exciting, huh?
Yeah. So an analogy here is that uh, when you have, if you suppose you were to make a shader that does a transformation like a point cloud operation, you would declare your uniform thing for like
Right.
you translate uniform vec3 you translate. So this is a uniform and it's applied uniformly throughout every point in your
Right.
like point cloud buffer, right? But through putting expressions on the parameter of the transform pop, you basically turn that uniform vec3 you translate into a buffer, and now your translation is actually dependent upon a kind of buffer of information where every point has a different attribute, like value of what my translation amount needs to be. So sorry, that's abstract and not it's not, I'm not presenting how the pop works, but like it's so cool that they've come up with this beautiful abstraction where you're easily able to go from something that is a uniform, like when you don't have an expression on it, into something that is a buffer, essentially, because it's a per point attribute.
So is a difference, and I totally get what you're saying, but I would like to understand it even further. Like, what is the real difference between like a uniform and a buffer? Is it that one is like procedure, or like one is more active and one is static, or?
So a uniform is like a uniform vec3. If I declare that, that's only 3 numbers. But if I have a
Gotcha.
buffer, then every point that exists is associated with a value of like a vec3. So previously you would have to have
like an array almost?
Not an array, but an image. So previously you would have to have an RGB image, and you'd say RGB, and you'd pack you'd pack 3 values. So you'd pack your TX, TY, TZ in your RGB channels, and you'd have to do a texture lookup to get that value, and then you dynamically apply whatever that looked up translation value is to your point. But it's just, they've come up with this beautiful system where now you previously had some like analogy where the parameters are, if you leave them as defaults, they're kind of like acting as uniforms. But if you script in an expression, then it becomes a buffer, and it's instead referring to a kind of texture lookup into the attribute of the buffer.
So you could still do that with GLSL. It just would have been more convoluted. Is that like a good way to put it?
Yeah, or I mean, it's just laborious. Like
Laborious.
managing
Gotcha.
with like when, for instance, I don't know if you've looked into my Boyd's project. Uh,
Yeah, I have actually.
yeah, so in the Boyd's project, we've got a lot of different buffers. We've got
Right.
like a velocity
Right.
buffer and a heading buffer
Interesting.
and like all these different things. And with pops, all of those are stored in the same node. You don't have to have a separate node at the beginning of the pipeline and then to have a separate output, and then you have independent feedback loops for each of those things. They all get stored. And so the process of saying like, hey, I'm this Boyd in this system and I need to query what my velocity is, instead of having to query into a texture, you're querying into a buffer that has already been like grouped for you in the node,
On the
and you
GPU
don't have
or in the.
you don't have to
Interesting.
organize this mess of nodes in which you have
Hmm.
a separate texture storing all of these different
Right.
uh, modalities of information.
Right. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, it really does kind of like obfuscate that idea of like RGB values being held for different, like an RGB value being held for something else instead of like RGB, right? Like a vector or like a position or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
It's like now it's just this is the node and this is what it does, and you don't have to think about like converting all
Yeah,
these pixel things, and which is crazy because it's like I think it's almost like a little bit sad in a way because like all the crazy like Paqueta stuff or like the stuff that you're doing with Boyd's, or the many examples of people that have been using like tops to do all this crazy 3D stuff is kind of like bye bye, like we don't need that
yeah.
anymore. It's like a little bit
But
sad in a way.
so another classic example of this is, suppose you have an integer, like
Hmm.
it's just a number between 0 and 1,000. What you want to do sometimes is take that integer and convert it into a 2D coordinate on an image. And so to
Mm.
get the x-axis, what you do is you say my ID, like my number between 0 and 1,000, and you say modulo my width of my image.
Oh,
And then
interesting.
what is your height of the image? You do a division by your uh, width of your image, but
Hmm.
you truncate it into an integer. So you remove the decimal. And so
Uh-huh.
every time you, like, if the image is 100 wide, then you're going to have like 0 through 99 divided by 100 are all 0. But then as soon as you get to 100, now 100 divided by 100 is 1. And so you move
Right.
up a row. And so this integer trick is like something that
Slow.
some people learn through others, or some people uh, like learn it organically. But like it's
Mm.
just one of those things that you kind of have to think through, and like that
Right.
the art of this is just a classic like uh, integer packing, like a transformation where you go from an integer to a 2D coordinate, or going from a
Mm.
coordinate back to a 2D integer,
Hmm.
or a 2D thing. Like that kind of art of like mathematical shader tricks. Like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun, and there are more difficult ones than the one. But that,
But we don't
yeah,
need
that
that
art,
anymore,
you
essentially.
don't need that anymore.
I mean, for people like myself, that is just like, I don't want to think about all those tricks and stuff. It's like it's so freeing. But at the same time, like what I was saying before about Popset was it was a little bit difficult for me to kind of um, like grasp the idea of attributes and passing those attributes from place to place to place. It's like a very different kind of way of thinking than even something like, like we were talking about before with like, your top being converted into spatial information. Um, but I guess it's just like everything. There's like a learning curve. And that actually brings me into, I want to go a little bit back into small David. You grew up in Chicago, and please just give us a little bit about kind of growing up in Chicago, what that was like. I'm fascinated to know where your fascination with music and sound kind of originated from. I don't know, but I would imagine that was your first kind of like love was music and audio, but maybe not. But please tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, Highland Park, and I think that I've just always loved music.
Hmm.
And I think that I didn't really have a talent Well, I mean, I guess my parents would like to say that I did have like a talent for art, but I feel like my art was always very algorithmic. So I would
Mm,
do stuff with like a ruler and uh,
mm,
draw things out, or like I remember actually, I think my mom helped me a lot in one project in fifth grade. I was doing a something for a Native American uh, studies
mm,
project where we were doing the Pacific. Studying the groups there, and
mm.
my mom took a index card and cut out a paper, and then we did like transformations of the paper and did like
Oh,
some,
cool.
like the Thanksgiving turkey where you're like drawing your hand.
Right, your hand.
You can think
Yeah.
of it as like something more advanced and like algorithmic than that. And so I think that although I kind of lacked some like traditional painting skills, I feel like I was like taught ways to like make up for it and do things
Interesting.
a little more um, algorithmically. But that's just, I guess, my like experience in like visual art. But
Hmm.
in terms of music, I got into playing guitar, jazz guitar, kind of, and also like jazz fusion guitar. I was really into uh, bands like Medeski, Martin and Wood, or Grateful Dead, or Led Zeppelin and stuff. So kind of
Nice.
rock and jazz. Um, and I wasn't thinking too much about audiovisual
Mm,
stuff for most of my life, really. I think I would just liked performing music and making music and stuff like GarageBand.
mm-hmm.
But when I got to college, I think that I took what was most transformative for me was taking an intro to computer animation course
Mm.
in my junior year, I think. Yeah, junior year. And so in that course, I was at Brown, and we also had students from RISD, and the students at
Mm.
RISD are excellent, true artists. And so we got to form a group within the course, and we learn Maya, and we do everything related to 3D animation
Oh,
pipeline.
wow.
And
Interesting.
I feel like that was one of the most like formative we were talking about like young David or something. So like I feel like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
learning that more than even my childhood, like being
Interesting.
exposed to working in a group in that in that college course with like the RISD students who were making amazing textures and stuff, and I was doing like 3D modeling and animation, and other people doing lighting and stuff. Like I think that was so much fun, and that really like lit a fire in me to be like, oh, I think that I can find some role to play in like in like a creative field, even though I'm not like a painter. And so
Interesting.
I feel like I've tried to keep the ball rolling ever since then.
Yeah, I mean, you've been definitely keeping it rolling. So, what did you go to school for originally? Was it just for computer science?
Oh, at Brown, that's a funny story. So originally I wanted to do computer science, but I think I overloaded myself in my like first year,
Hmm.
and I got so discouraged from taking hardcore, like too many of the hardest courses at Brown because I was like
Mm-hmm.
overconfident, and I was like burnt out, and I
Mm.
said, I'm actually gonna not do computer science. I need to do something that I can manage a little bit better
Mm.
myself. And so I did mathematics, economics,
Wow.
and
Interesting.
I mean, I say that and people are like, "Oh wow, you did mathematics," but I'm like, yeah, I mean, I
I
got
was
by.
trying to do something else. Yeah.
I was trying to do. I'm like a failed computer scientist, but uh, yeah. And then so anyway, even though I didn't do much in the computer science department at Brown, other than the like the intro sequence in the computer animation course, I think that I've always had like internships related to computer programming, and I've always just
Mm.
tried to keep it up as an interest and skill. And so uh, when I was later in my time at Brown, when I was had finished my requirements, I had some free time, and I decided that one, I was going to learn a foreign language because it seemed like the best time to do it, and two, I was going to do like something involving like creative media and
Mm.
animation. So I did an independent study, and I was doing stuff with GLSL and Quartz Composer, which is really
Oh, wow.
obscure.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
um,
Quartz is cool.
yeah.
Really interesting. And so that was kind of like your advent into this world of I guess audio visual. So wow, interesting. And was it Like, was it like, not love at first sight, but was it like once you kind of dived into this world, was it just like, you're like, okay, I'm all in, I want to continue this? Was there ever like, did you have like almost a trajectory of like, okay, I want to be an artist, I want to be a developer, or was it kind of just like a lot of things all at once
Uh,
kind of thing?
yeah, I've definitely gone through like early, like at that moment when I was like finishing college, I was definitely confused about where to take it.
Mm.
Um, because I finished Brown and I was like, you know what what I want to do is be the most technical person at an animation studio. Like I feel
Gotcha. Like a
uh
tech artist or something like that.
like a tech art a technical director as they're called in something
Mm.
like a feature film animation
Yeah, like
studio.
ILM or something
Um,
like that.
yeah, and I thought that how I'm going to get there is by um, like knowing tools like mel scripting. So like in Maya, do you know what mel scripting is?
I do, but it's so
Yeah,
obscure. It's like such a
yeah,
funny thing to.
it's
It's
really
so funny.
obscure, but that's the kind of thing like a technical director needs to know, and
Right.
or I guess whatever other positions titles there are. But so that's how I ended up getting my first job because I finished Brown and I was sending out resumes to animation studios like, hey, like I don't have like the biggest portfolio of animation or anything, but like I'm a really good programmer. I didn't say this, but
Mm.
like this was kind of my appeal, and I
Implied.
was like, this is my this is my Mel scripting project that I've done. Like I want to go into your like After Effects pipeline and make you awesome like scripts for After Effects and whatnot, so that like you do cool animations. Like I
Nice.
didn't that's how I like thought of myself, and I think that I got a really big stroke of luck because in my hometown of Chicago there was this studio called Leviathan, and
Mm.
uh, and I didn't know about it until like coming home from college and being unemployed for like a brief period of time. But I sent in a resume and I ended up talking to them, and I met the engineering director and I showed him my Mel scripting like 3D projection system, where the intention of
Nice.
the project was that you're going to position your screens in 3D space and it's going to do this kind of, you know, camp snapper
Reprojection.
style thing, but all
Right.
inside Maya.
Wow, that's cool.
And
That must have been
and
really
that
cool
the
for them
render
to see.
yeah, I think so. And then
Well,
and also like
obviously
the
you got the
rendering
job.
quality would be high quality. And this is
Right.
essentially the technique that um, I think orthographic projection does
Okay.
in TouchDesigner right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think that that impressed them, and and I got the internship. I had to start as an internship, but you know that was actually the greatest uh, happy, you know, strokes of luck in my life because I stayed there for over 5 years and learned so much from being in a community of an animation studio where you have just like I'm making some analogy to like what I had in college in that intro to animation course. You have, you know, the 3D animators and the modelers and the designers and the production crew and like all that stuff. And I was just so excited to be swimming in
In
like
a team.
this like fast moving environment, like collaborative environment where I was like, I'm like the engineer and that's cool. But like these other people are like the designers. And like I just
Right.
have to be like the person who
Interesting.
like writes the code to achieve like their design. So I put my hat on and I was like, other people are gonna wear those hats and I just kind of
So
had a really
I actually wanted to talk to you about Leviathan because it's a very interesting studio. We're gonna just show a little bit of their website here where we talk a little bit about it. But yeah, I mean, you were there for 5 years. You said, did you
yeah.
you know, I mean, you gave us a little bit about it, but just give us a little bit more. Like, what was it like working at such a big corporate, commercial, maybe is a better word, commercial studio like this that is doing massive projects. What was your role there, like on a day to day? And yeah, like you mentioned working with a team. I think that's always kind of like the happy realization when you go work for big companies. It doesn't always happen, right? Because you could be in a really shitty team, but most of the time, or a lot of times when you go work for a big company, you're like so excited to work with all these smart people, and it's like, yay, I can like learn from all these smart people and like get better at all these things and stay in my lane, but also like expand my understanding of things. So yeah, just give us a little bit more about this because I was looking at their website and they do really amazing things.
Yeah. Well, I should say that the company is now called Envoy, and their website is
Okay,
probably
they've changed.
weareenvoy.com. But this
Okay,
website that you're pulling up is a lot of material that I played a role in each of
awesome.
these projects. Um, so it's kind of like their older material and not like the Envoy material that happens to be on the
Gotcha.
page. Like, yeah,
Yeah, here we are
you're
on
at
Voy.
the like formerly Leviathan, and so that's why it's a very Leviathan
Gotcha.
focused
Okay, okay,
page.
cool, cool, cool.
Um, but I, when I was at Leviathan, it was a company that was at times very small and at times very large,
Hmm,
and then back to small again, and then
interesting.
back to big again. And so we rode a couple of waves, and then that also involved the merger with Envoy.
Hmm.
And so I feel like I know what it's like where I have like one manager and that works fine. And I also know what it's like to have one manager and like six colleagues or so at a time
Right.
max in the engineering team. And that's also fine. So
Hmm.
I feel like it's just that earlier you said it was a big company. And I feel like maybe in a sense it is, but like at the smallest, it was like 15 people and its largest it
Okay.
was like 45. So
15's pretty
something
big
like
still, I would say. It's still like a
that.
nice size. Was it your first like introduction to immersive and interactive like media?
Yeah, I think that I mean, yeah, it was my first job outside of college other than internships.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also the first one really involving a kind of animation studio or a
Mm.
design studio, or as what we like to say is an experiential design
Right, right.
studio. And so it was my first taste of that.
Hmm. Did you like it? Like, was it something that was kind of interesting to you? So
Yeah,
different than what you were kind of familiar with, I guess, in some ways, but also very familiar.
yeah. I mean, I absolutely loved it. And I feel like I experienced a lot of different projects. Like some of them were, I think the most common denominator was Kinect's Xbox Connect
Hmm.
or
Like
Microsoft
the
Connect.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Azure.
and but yeah, and then later became
Yeah.
Azure, and
Orb
another
Tech now.
common, yeah, another
It's
common thing
like,
was touchscreens,
hmm.
and touchscreens. So yeah, and then they also involved, you know, what do we say? What are they called? CMS, which is content management system.
Oh, kind of
So
management system. Yeah, 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 yeah.
involving WordPress, where you're going to give something to a
Gotcha.
client, and the client needs a WordPress website where they can upload
Right.
stuff, and then TouchDesigner needs to automatically have access to that
Pull it.
information so that it can put it on
Yeah.
the wall and stuff. And so,
So was it Touch Designer? Was it
yeah,
Touch Designer all in this studio?
yeah. So I should have said sooner that
Interesting.
basically I
No,
was
no, no.
using uh, like 90% of the projects at the studio involved TouchDesigner. Some of them
Hmm.
involved just like 30-second broadcast animations.
Okay.
But let's say that 90% of the projects involved
Interactive stuff.
TouchDesigner, and 100% of what I was working on involved TouchDesigner. So I
So
was using it.
was that your introduction to Touch Designer through this
Yeah,
studio? Oh,
yeah,
oh,
it
well,
was.
we got to thank the studio very much
Yeah,
for introducing David
yeah,
to Touch.
yeah.
That's
And
interesting.
and
Okay, cool,
and
cool, cool, cool.
the engineering director at the time that I joined, he has a very long relationship with Touch Designer
Eduardo.
going back to the like early 2000s.
Wow.
And so he has had a lot of foresight into knowing, oh yeah, I should. We Touch Designer is great, and everyone should use it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Wow, so that must have been a really big change from like from school, like going into a studio, like a commercial corporate environment, whatever, but also like a completely different environment of like expression, right? Like Touch Designer, and I actually wanted to talk to you about this later on, but I think it's interesting to talk about it now. Like the advent, or not the advent, but like the shift from computer science scripting, Mel, right? Like this kind of like linear kind of scripting to a more node based environment. Was that like a big thing for you? Was it like hard to wrap your head around it?
Uh, yeah, I no actually to mention the difference of it being node based versus not node based. It's funny because my exposure to node based systems was through Quartz Composer, and that was
That's
what I
right,
did in my
Quartz. Oh,
independent
I forgot
study.
about that. Right, that's right. That's right.
And
That's right.
And so I had some
That's
experience
fun.
with Chords Composer, but
Interesting.
not in the most common ways. Like the most common ways are
Mm.
probably Max MSP, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you're an architecture person, something like Grasshopper or Rhino, or I'm also talking about like what was popular like 10 years ago that was like node based. Now there's way more. Like there's Unreal blueprints
Totally.
and so on.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
node-based
but
things now.
so I think that just like having this discussion with you, I feel like I've touched so many different like aspects of programming, and maybe that's something that just comes with being around a long time, because I've done JavaScript and I've done Mel and I've done CMS and WordPress and yada yada. I could just go on
Mm.
too long about the different things,
No,
but I
this is
think
what we
that
want to. This is what we want to hear.
that's like part of my like formative experiences, like being
Mm-hmm.
exposed to a lot of different technologies.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, shifting a little bit, you kind of mentioned your interest in music and your kind of maybe your first love in terms of expression. Um, what was kind of, I'll just preface this by saying, right now you're getting your PhD. I don't know what the right word would be. Pursuing your PhD, I guess, at Princeton University in computer science, and I know that you're I don't know what the right word is. I'm so dumb, but like your thesis, I guess, or
Yeah,
your PhD thing is
yeah, thesis.
around music and audio kind of reactivity. Would that be correct?
Uh, I mean, I think that if I had unlimited time, it would be, but I don't have
Okay.
unlimited time. Um,
Okay.
like ultimately, I feel like that's like the the the, the end
Mm,
goal, which is
the
that
goal.
why I'm doing this is to further the field of audiovisual,
Gotcha.
reactivity and design and so forth, and
Mm,
like to make people who have the like aesthetic preferences of like touch designer, like think of like a touch designer user, like I want to make the generative art community more powerful, in
mm.
terms of
Like
like what it,
legitimize it academically almost.
no, to make them here I'll go into more detail, which is that
Please.
uh, uh, some of my projects in the college course, and also in my side projects, were for making audiovisual animation, and I didn't want to do it the kind of um, haphazard way in which you kind of just set up an audio filter and you like filter out the low frequencies and the high frequencies, and you have something tied to that. I wanted it to be extremely precise and
Mm,
tied to the music, because I was inspired by artists like Oscar Fischinger from the 1930s, who
okay.
painstakingly annotated uh, orchestra pieces, and then made animation in a kind of stop motion manner.
Oh
And I think
wow.
that when you put in that effort of transcribing and choreographing your animation to your sound very very well, then the animation turns out well. And so
Mm-hmm.
I have had a handful of experiences in my life in which I have listened to music very, very deeply and transcribed it very, very painstakingly in order to make animations for it. And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, I want to kind of get rid of that task and just make it easier for people to have access to all of the information that is embedded within a song so that they
Mm-hmm.
can interpret it in a visual manner however they want. So, what I'm
Interesting.
doing in my PhD is related to essentially understanding or deconstructing music into its core components, such that when it is deconstructed into those components, people like TouchDesigner users can use it to make incredible animations.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. So there is like a very succinct goal, I guess, in your thesis of like where you're trying to reach. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for pursuing that. I'm sure it's not a simple task and probably very challenging.
Yeah.
And I would love to talk to you a little bit about FAUST, functional audio stream. Could you just give us like a rundown of what that actually is? When you were going into when you were moving into kind of your PhD thesis and kind of getting into this audiovisual world, what was your like what was the driving force behind wanting to pursue this, besides for just like what you were saying before of wanting to bring this kind of audio visual to TouchDesigner? Was there something that you were seeing that was missing within the community? Was there something, because it's a big thing to pursue, you know, a PhD. It's very, I can imagine it's very
Yeah.
difficult, you know, challenge.
No, I think I would tie it back to these core motivations of being able to understand music and deconstruct it so that it's more accessible for people who want to make derivative animations. You
Mm-hmm.
know, using the name derivative is very appropriate for this situation because of TouchDesigner. You know, it's like
Mm.
what is like it's the audio visualization is the derivative of it's a derivative product of the audio itself.
Mm. Interesting.
I've never had a discussion actually with the derivative people about what their meaning of the company is, but it's funny because it obviously has so many different meanings. One of them is the
Right.
calculus meaning of derivative
Mm.
and being nerdy and mathematical, but another appropriate meaning is to say that some art is derivative. But I
Mm.
wonder if they take it as a badge of honor to say that art can be derivative in a good way, and
Mm.
that's kind of the culture. um, it's like that's the message preached by the guy who does everything as a remix. I forgot his name. It's Kirby or something,
I'm not
right?
familiar, no.
Okay, so I would maybe any listener can look up everything as a remix on
Oh,
YouTube and look at the
I'm
video.
familiar with Everything is a Remix. I don't know the guy's name, but yeah, that's
I
a
thought it
pretty
might be a
classic
Kirby.
concept, right? I mean,
Yeah,
everything is a remix.
yeah. So
Um,
like to wear the word derivative as a badge of honor is a good thing, I
mm.
think.
I would think that maybe it's like the idea of like, you know, being able to convert, you know, like signals into imagery or imagery into tables or something like that. It's like they're all derivatives of each other in some way, maybe.
Yes.
You know, like
Yeah.
they're all kind of the
Right.
same under the hood. Like, you know, over the hood they're different, but under the hood they're all just zeros and ones. And here's a way to like, you know, obfuscate it in a way that you can kind of relate to it.
I agree.
But yeah, I wonder.
I
I bet you Greg
great name for a
has.
company.
I bet you Greg has so many explanations to that question and probably has a bunch of answers ready to go.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, okay, so before we get into your set portion, I have one more question, and it's related to TouchDesigner. You did kind of mention it before, but you know, it's not often that we get to speak to people that worked for TouchDesigner, even as, you know, freelance and something like that. And you did mention to us a little bit about what you did for them, but can you give us a little bit more about like what it was like to work with the derivative team, and you know, what was that culture like, you know, working on that team? Because it's obviously like a great one, and you know, and it's always interesting to hear like firsthand what it was like.
Yeah. It was a wonderful and awesome experience. I feel like they were so open to ideas, and everything is about a love of the product and
Mm,
a love of the community. And so I feel like
mm,
it's just it was a wonderful opportunity to get to work with them and yeah, contribute. So it was really a privilege to get to work with them.
nice. Was it all remote?
Yeah, it was remote, and then a nice thing was that we did a project for SIGGRAPH, and this was in 2023, towards the end of the time that I
Mm,
was working for them, and
mm-hmm.
so we got to meet up at SIGGRAPH in Los Angeles,
Nice.
and help out the SIGGRAPH crew with their stage animations.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. SIGGRAPH is great. We were just at SIGGRAPH this year with Magic Box with my company. It was really fun. It was very small actually. I was very surprised at how small it was, but and it was so funny because all like the main floor was kind of like, I was like a little bit like, okay, whatever. But then all the lab stuff was like mind blowing shit. Like, dude, there was this like holographic like imagery thing that was with gas. They were like pumping in different types of gases through like all these like crazy like diamond, you know, encrusted like tubes or something. And it was like all
Yeah,
like, and it was like this tiny little hologram, but it was like very high detailed. And it's just like they're shooting gas and then capturing it in this like lattice or something. And it was like so intricate, like this huge machine, and he was telling me it was like millions and millions of dollars, and it's producing like this tiny little thing, but it was just like,
Yeah.
it's crazy that these technologies exist, like people are like pursuing these like really awesome technologies. It was really awesome to see that. Okay, so we can definitely shift now into the set, and we were talking a little bit about before, your PhD and pursuing kind of like this. Do you have a name for it, by the way? Your thesis Do you have a name for? Not yet.
No name yet.
Okay.
But I'd say the core components are FAUST and machine learning.
Okay, so FAUST and machine learning. All right, so David is going to show us into his a little bit of his thesis kind of project, I guess, and give us a little bit of rundown of what FAUST, functional audio stream, it means and is. And yeah, take it away.
Cool. So I think what I'm doing in the PhD is I'm writing code in FAUST, and then I'm automatically converting it into a machine learning framework called JAX. One of the more popular machine learning frameworks is called PyTorch, and that's widely used in both academia and in industry. Mm-hmm. JAX is a little lesser known. It's mainly used by Google people and former Google people who have like left to go somewhere else and do more stuff with JAX. But so I have this process where I can convert any FAUST code into JAX, and now that it's in JAX, the machine learning framework, I can run it in a high performance computing cluster. So I can take like 8 GPUs at once and render audio on all eight GPUs in a large batch, so-called, and then try to optimize the parameters of the DSP, digital signal processing. I'm trying to hold back on jargon.
No, please.
So let's suppose that your effect is just a low-pass filter. So if what you're giving it is pure noise, like a hissing sound, the low-pass is going to turn it into like a low rumble. And suppose you want to figure out what that cutoff frequency is that transforms the inputs into the outputs. So you might have just this one high-level parameter controlling the low-pass filter cutoff, and you could use traditional machine learning to figure that out. But I'm trying to just scale up approach that generalizes this to any kind of DSP, audio signal processing, that can be expressed in this programming language FAUST, and then run it on a high performance like an HPC, and try to optimize the parameters of the system that you've written, the DSP.
Interesting.
So part of what I do is related to knowing FAUST very well, and making
what is
useful
FAUST?
things.
Like, if we
FAUST,
just don't know what it is, what is FAUST?
Yeah, FAUST is the functional audio stream language. So that's the kind of acronym, FAUST. And it's a language that has been around 22 years, I think. It was developed as a part of a PhD, I believe, by 2 French people, and they've continued to be involved in the project ever since then. 2 or 3 people. And it's just a very well supported and established language, but it kind of is obviously not as popular as something like Java or Python. But I think for the domain specific task of audio processing, I think it is respected and used.
Interesting.
So the concept of a domain specific language, a DSL, is kind of like GLSL. Like GLSL is a domain-specific language for writing shaders, whereas Python is so general purpose that you wouldn't call it a domain-specific language, because it can handle any kind of domain.
So FAUST would be a DSL but in the audio world, I guess.
Yes, yeah, and being a DSL offers certain advantages.
What?
Whereas. Well, it's just like the kind of ergonomics of it, you could say. It's like Python has so many features that it can be overwhelming, whereas this language has a narrow but well-defined syntax that has a certain elegance, and I think beyond that is a lot more technical details. Yeah.
Interesting. It's almost like more optimized for the user in that sense, like it's geared towards like specific tasks, so therefore it's easier for you to kind of wrap your head around its uses and its functions and things like that.
Yeah, I think that
would
being
HTML
a
be considered a DSL?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I think HTML I guess you could say, is it's that ML and HT is probably markup language.
Okay.
And so, and then another one is YAML, yet another markup language.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
so,
Interesting.
and Markdown, like these are kind of not general purpose languages. Like you wouldn't
Right.
make a database in Markdown or something, or you wouldn't
Mm.
try to solve the human genome in
In HTML.
HTML or whatever. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you for that explanation. Definitely helps to put things into a little bit of more perspective. Yeah. So, you want to share your screen and show us what you have here for us?
Yeah. So this is
Okay.
the FAUST IDE, and it is very fully featured. And so here's where I can write code, and I'm going to make the code bigger. And on the left, we have our file manager, and over here is where we can write files. And on the right, or write code. On the right, we can manage our inputs and outputs. Like we can control the MIDI input if we're going to make a synthesizer, or if we want to have audio be piped into the system, we can control the audio input. And then you can turn the system on and off down here. So I'm going to turn it off because I want to focus on just the language itself. So very briefly, I want to like sell you FAUST in hopefully just a handful of minutes.
Nice.
And so let's start with the most basic system, which is to define our process. So every like code file in FAUST has to define process exactly once. So first I'm going to hit play at the top. Over here, there's play. And then I'll also do real-time compile down here on the lower left so that as I make changes to the code, it's going to be continuously compiled and turned into something that I can hear and also see visually. So if I go to the diagram view, this is producing an SVG diagram of our code that we've written up here. So this underscore is called the wire operator, and it's kind of like a null operator in TouchDesigner. Like I'm selling this to TouchDesigner community by calling it a null, right? So here's a wire, but if I use a comma, then it's putting two of them in sequence. And so this is a pass-through operation that's taking a stereo input and it's producing a stereo output. But what if I multiply the right input by 0.5? So now we instantly get a new block diagram where the two things are coming in, and I'm taking the right thing and I'm multiplying it by 0.5, and the left thing is staying as is. But now instead of this thing on the left, I can just type sine here, and instantly, bam, we get a new block diagram.
That diagram thing is so cool.
Yeah,
that's really awesome. Like the visual expression is so cool.
Yeah, so I want to work our way up towards what I think is a really cool little mini project in FAUST, which is to make a stereo ping pong delay. So first, let's just talk about what the components of our stereo ping pong delay are. So we need something that is going to it's going to involve feedback, stereo feedback, right? We also are going to delay the channels. So each of as the channels go back, we also want to delay them multiple samples. Like we need a delay of like a half second when they in their return thing before they are fed back into the input again. Is that kind of making sense for like a TouchDesigner, like a chop user? This is kind of like feedback chops. And I feel like feedback chops for certain kinds of signal processing in TouchDesigner are like tricky, but maybe I can sell this to TouchDesigner users by saying like, if you develop your skills in this programming language of FAUST, then using stuff like feedback chops in TouchDesigner can become more intuitive. So we're going to involve stereo feedback of some kind. We're going to delay the channels, and we're also going to reduce the gain of the channels. And then we also need to incorporate UI. We could incorporate UI in order to control, say, the delay of the channels, like what the recursive time is, and also the gain. So like if the feedback is very, very high, then it would sound very, very loud, right? So if we think about doing a stereo delay, the components of that stereo delay are that we're going to have two things coming in, like a stereo input, and we're also going to have a stereo output, right? But we actually need to take those two outputs and we need to feed them back into the beginning. So I want to I'm going to visualize this because we have done import standard FAUST. I'm going to define another thing, which is I'm going to say SI bus 4, and then I'm going to do this merge operator called SI bus 2. And now I'm going to uncomment this thing up here. So what you can see here is we have 4 channels that are being merged into 2 channels. So here you can picture this is like instrument left. Like the first 2 would be the first instrument, the left and the right. And the second one are the second instrument, left and the right. And you can see that the left channels get merged together and the right channels get merged together, right? So now what you can see from this diagram is that we want to have these 2 things, these 2 outputs. We actually want them to be connected back into the first 2 inputs again. Okay, so I'm going to silo this off as an expression. And now what I'm going to do is do recursion. So here, all I've done is surrounded by parentheses, which doesn't change it at all. But I need to transform this block diagram that I see here, because what I want to do is take the 2 outputs that I see here down on the right, and I want to bring them back to the beginning, because what is going on in a stereo feedback is that you're adding, you're taking the previous outputs and you're adding them back into the input pipeline again, right? So if I now do the recurse operator in FAUST and type SI bus 2, SI bus 2 is just an expression for if I do process equals SI.bus 2, you'll see that it's the same thing as putting 2 things in parallel.
Gotcha.
These are identical. So now we have this thing. And so now what we need to do is to label this a little bit better. So I could call this this expression on the right, I could say our feedback, FB, and then what I'm going to do is say, well, what is our feedback thing? It's this thing. And our system is unchanged. And now what I want to do is to make a swap utility. So I'm going to say swap x, y equals y comma x. Now look what happens when I say process equals swap. The first thing gets labeled as x, and then it is sent as a write put as x.
Interesting.
And the right channel is y, but it gets passed to the left channel. So we're swapping our 2 things. So now I'm going to no longer use swap here, but I'm going to activate this expression again. And feedback, instead of feedback, it's actually going to be swap. So actually, I mean, I could have even put it here. So it's getting a little gnarlier, but you can see that what was in the left channel, here's the left channel output, is going to be called X. But then X is going to appear up here. And then when you follow the signal chain, it's actually going to go to the right channel again. So see that over here we started, if you see my mouse, we started with the left output, it becomes X, but then it becomes X over here. And now when we follow the channel again, it actually goes to the right channel. So this is what the ping pong effect is of a stereo delay. And now what we're going to do next is we need to add in a delay, because these are only 1 sample delays. But if I want to have a stereo delay. So I'm going to say stereo delay equals at 5,000 and also at, I lost my at 6,000. And so these are delays of 5,000 and 6,000 samples respectively. And so now if I put this in here and I type this in and I connect the swap to the delay, now we get a delay.
Wow.
And we have to do one more thing, which is gain adjust. And what gain adjust is going to do is going to multiply the left signal by 0.9 and the right signal by 0.9.
Why do we need to do a gain adjust?
Because otherwise the feedback system would
lose it,
blow up in volume.
Okay.
We'd add something to itself over and over again, and it would accumulate, and you'd get too much feedback. So we've all seen that in TouchDesigner, right? And so now I'm going to keep sequencing them, and so now we have our system. It's actually become more neatly labeled. So we have our left and our right input, and you can see that those immediately go to the output. But then we take our left and our right, and we see to ourselves, okay, those things get swapped. Then we apply a delay, and then we adjust the gain, and then the system repeats. And so I think that we weren't able to get the audio working for this broadcast, but if you were to go in here, you could hit the loop button, and then you could hit play, and you'd hear this marimba sound, and then the marimba would go in this fun feedback loop. And one final touch here is that we can have the amount of gain be adjusted by a slider. So I can say gain slider equals H slider feedback. And I'm going to give it a default value of 0.5, a minimum of 0, a maximum of 0.99 to be safe, and a step size of 0.01. So now I take this gain slider and I put it here, and I also put it here. And the system compiles as usual. But when I go to my DSP tab, now we have a slider. And so this would control the feedback amount of our stereo ping pong delay. And so what I've presented here is just a microcosm of what I'm trying to do with machine learning, because as you write DSP, like as you write FAUST code here, you could declare a lot of UI sliders here, like feedback. But when it turns into a neural network and runs on a lot of GPUs with thousands of things being rendered in parallel, these are like learnable parameters. Like ChatGPT is like a neural network with billions of parameters, but here this is just one parameter. But in a more complicated audio signal process, there might be 100 or so parameters. And so you might do some kind of fine tuning where you want to control the parameters to optimize to achieve a certain sound, or to also control the parameters in real time to respond to a certain kind of sound. So I'm kind of exploring those kinds of concepts. And to tie it back to TouchDesigner again, it's really about being able to kind of take any kind of arbitrary music and to understand how to like reconstruct it and understand it with like languages like FAUST, because this gives you access to what the components are. Like suppose you have an LFO, like if you're making like an audiovisual piece and there's this cool like wub wub sound and dubstep, you might want to understand, like you might want to have access to that modulation chain of what is modulating the wub wub sound, and not just in terms of volume, but in terms of like the real synthesizer DSP. And so I'm just trying to kind of surface that information to people who want to make audiovisual stuff based on it.
So in a future, hopefully sooner than later, we'll have like a way to have like an audio analyzer of some sort that doesn't only give me like you were saying, like a 0 to 1 value of like if it's being hit or not, but it's actually understanding the audio in like a more meaningful way. What would be like the example of that?
Yeah, like I'm really into modular synthesis stuff like Serum or Vital or Massive from Native Instruments and so on. And so what I'm saying is that I think a common technique in the audiovisual community is to take something that, like, to tie your animation mostly to the loudness of different frequency bands, like low, mids, and highs. But what I want to say is that a synthesizer like Serum involves a lot of modulation, where the envelope is modulating some destination, like the wavetable position, or the LFO is modulating some other thing, like the amount of distortion applied. And so I want to kind of surface all of those intermediate signals and present them to the user, so that you can make more animations that are tied even further to the musical source than kind of simple ones like loudness of different frequency bands.
Interesting. Yeah, it's something so fascinating. Like I always wonder why it's so difficult to like analyze audio, right? Because like you'd think that analyzing the frequency is easy, right? It's just a band and you just have like, okay, this is the top and this is the bottom. But like, I never understood why, like for instance, like an auto BPM tool, like why are those things not like so synonymous with like TouchDesigner, let's say? Where's the palette tool for like auto BPM analyzation, or like even in Resolume, right? Like it's like you would imagine, or I would imagine, that these things would be simple or kind of like easy to process, but it seems like the processing of them is like heavy, right? Like just like being able to like listen to an audio and understand the BPM of it is difficult. And I guess you're trying to solve this with different types of techniques.
I think BPM is largely a solved problem. I think that's something that I've heard interest from other people on is, how do I have a system that understands big changes in music? Like how can I have something
Like
that
swells
understands
and
that we've gone from a
leads.
no, or that we've gone from a chorus into a bridge into a break
Right.
into a whatever.
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
I want to have something that can respond with like, you know, 0.1 second latency.
Totally.
Those big transition moments that occur in music, because I want to have something that I can just feed a playlist of music, but it's
Hmm.
going to at least like do a scene changer style transition between different moments in a fully automated way, without me
Totally.
labeling. Okay, within this song, these are the moments, and it needs to be done in real time,
Yeah.
and so that hasn't been done. Although there are automated solutions for offline. If you have access to the entire song, you can label those different moments.
Moments. Yeah, really interesting. I mean, it's something that I also have been really wanting to figure out is like I want to I have like all these in my shows I have like characters. I call them characters, but they're really just like shapes. But the shapes have like different personalities, and they can do, you know, most of it is like generative positional movement, right? So they can do like random movement, or they could do like a noise movement, or like an infinite sign. And what I wanted to have is like, okay, instead of me being like, okay, now the music is the right time for this thing, okay, trigger, now the music is like, have a way to like you're saying, listen to the audio. Is there a swell? Is there a chorus? Is there a drop? Okay, and then have the character or the object just like naturally move, in the sense of like, okay, now's like a really sporadic part of the music. Let's do a noise. Okay, now's a really like, a swelling kind of movement. Let's do like a movement like that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's hard to. First of all, I don't have any idea how to really get to that position. I mean, I'm thinking of like some like, AI algorithm, but what you're saying is it's like a processing of being able to get it so low latency, right? Is like such a hard. That's like the hard part, I guess.
Yeah, definitely latency is a key issue.
Is it like is the current hardware systems not able to do the computation that is needed, or is it just like the systems aren't built to like actually utilize the hardware?
Well, I think an analogy to be made is a system that is translating from one language into another as you speak. But these technologies are coming out right now. So, like, if I'm speaking English and I'm going to have an automated machine learning system that's going to translate it into French, there's a kind of theoretical minimum of latency required, because
Right.
I have to
Right.
finish my sentence before I say what my subject, and like, if in one language the subject becomes it goes before the verb, but in the other
Totally.
language it's the reverse. You have to wait for both of those things to be said in the
For
source
sure.
language, and so that requires a certain amount of latency. And I think that there is some analogous thing to say where you
Hmm.
can't go to the theory. Like, in theory, you don't need any latency at all. Maybe it's only one sample, because you're kind of predicting the future. Like, oh, I can really feel that,
Hmm.
like, we've had four measures, and so the most
Right.
likely thing is a change in
Hmm.
so and so thing. But really, in reality, in a practical sense, you have to actually wait for that moment to actually occur in order to
Hmm.
respond to it. So
So it could be like some sort of mixing of like predictive, like a some like not an LLM per se, but like a some sort of model that you've taught to listen to like all the EDM tracks or all the whatever tracks, and it kind of
yeah,
predicts, okay, now's gonna be a swell, now's gonna be a drop, now's gonna be a thing, and then you can reduce the latency almost with predictability in some way.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's
It's
exciting.
funny how far machine learning is coming these days with like
Yeah,
generative modeling.
for sure, for sure. Are you big into that kind of stuff? Are you, because I know like machine learning
Yeah,
and AI is kind of like the same thing, but just a different term. But like, are you?
yeah, yeah. I think it's actually at the core of what I'm doing, is like training neural networks these days,
Hmm.
because I think I've already done most of the FAUST work of like understanding the language and making the
Right.
useful code in the language, like the synthesizers and the instruments and the effects that I like and that I want to
Hmm.
use for uh, like machine learning purposes. So now I'm in the stage of training neural networks to control those parameters.
Cool. That's really exciting. Hey, is a VST like, is that like, could that be built in Faust? Is that just like a wrapper of some
Yeah,
sort?
yeah. I mean, okay. So I think I'll pull up a link here. So I have
Yay.
this. I'll have this page, FAUST tutorial.
Hmm.
This is a multi-day workshop that I did this past winter
Oh
for
yeah.
the Princeton community here. It's mainly undergrads who want to attend this sort of thing, but you can see that it's just like markdown files and some. Well, okay. Here's what the cool thing. So there's this guitar pedal, and you can get it pre-assembled. And
Uh-huh.
right now I guess it's out of stock, but it's a kit. And so if you're good with soldering, you can assemble it
Mm.
yourself. Or if you want to pay an extra like $50, then you can get it pre-assembled. And what we did in the workshop was we wrote code in Faust, and then we installed the kind of command line tools that allow you to deploy that Faust code to this guitar pedal. So
Huh.
I'm not making
Interesting.
money or a commission off doing this, but I think that this is one of the cooler things that you can do with Faust is to customize your own guitar pedal, and and so we had fun with this, and I was also kind of the author of this conversion utility that helps you convert Faust code into this essentially C++ code for this hothouse thing, but you don't have to know any C++. It's fully
Right.
automated.
It's just right. Your software is where I guess your code is doing that. You also have a FAUST to TouchDesigner what would be the word? A
Yeah,
converter, right? Is
yeah.
that's
So I'll pull up the link to that. So this is the homepage of Faust, TD Faust. So you can run Faust inside TouchDesigner,
Mhm.
and I think that it has this video is the main tutorial about it. And I think that if you also are curious about Faust, then also study that Faust tutorial page that I
Mhm.
assembled because that came after this TD Faust project. And
Gotcha.
I'll show you that in I have TD Faust open on my computer.
Nice.
So this is what the main tow file looks like. And I think we're not going to be able to hear the audio, unfortunately. But I'll show you that what that GitHub page, TD Faust, what it shows you is that you can create the Faust chop. And it's also precompiled. So you can just go to the page and go to the releases and get the zip file, and you'll be able to have these things. So there's Faust chop. So if I put this down here, there's a code thing. And so basically you take a DAT and you write the
The
Faust
FAUST
code in it.
code.
So the very basic thing would be to say process equals underscore underscore. So if I take this and if I cross my fingers and I say code, and now if I say compile, oh, it crashed. Why did it do that?
Nice.
Um, it could be like a driver issue.
But in
Um,
theory,
in theory, that would work. I'm going to open up a new tab so that I'm not gonna compile things. I mean, this did work when I tested it an
no,
hour ago.
come on. If we don't have at least one crash in the stream, then
Yeah,
what are we even doing? You know,
yeah.
we're not pushing it if we're not
So
crashing it.
yeah. Okay, so I mean, here I'll test my luck again. So I'm just gonna hit compile on this one. So if I hit compile on this one, it's playing a synthesizer and it's a stereo synthesizer and it sounds good. It sounds like On the Run by Pink Floyd. Now,
Ooh,
if I go here
cool.
to custom and I go to reverb, then I can place this reverb thing down here, and you can see that it has a lot of parameters. And I'll do an audio device in, or no, audio file in, and I'll place this down, and I'll connect this. And if I had an audio device out, which I won't do, then we'd hear this. And this reverb is being applied to our stereo input, and you can adjust the parameters like the damp and the wet here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see
Mm-hmm.
this would be like 0, and this would be fully wet.
Mm-hmm.
And these parameters that are showing up here on the GUI come from what I declared in the Faust code. So if I hop
Like the
back to the
sliders that you were
IDE,
showing us before.
yeah, I showed you the sliders. So
Mm-hmm.
oops. So if I hop back here, so I'm going to say reverb.dsp, and I'm going to import the standard libraries. So import standard Faust.library. And now what I'm going to say is process equals DM, and then there's this built-in reverb called Vital, which comes from the Vital synthesizer because I studied the C++ code of Vital and converted
Mm-hmm.
it into Faust and made it accessible here. And so you can see that these are the parameters that are, this is like a function that is inside the library. So you'd have to look at the source code to see how it works, but it just declares a bunch of UI elements like these sliders. So here, this like mix parameter that would be here is actually the mix parameter. It's probably the damp wet one. So why is it called damp wet?
Or there was one mix right under it, by the way.
Oh, damp
mix EQ.
Yeah, I think I think something about the names is, maybe I'll have to think about why it's a little inconsistent. Maybe I renamed them, but yeah. So anyway, it just gives you can write your code in FAUST and kind of prototype it here. And now this is a system where you can get two kinds of things. You can get a custom operator that has just one purpose, which is your code, your FAUST code that you've written, or you can have a general purpose FAUST chop in which you write arbitrary code. And that's what I did earlier when I wrote process equals underscore, but then it crashed. So, I mean, it works because this node up here is actually just running a FAUST node under the hood. But I think that maybe it's because I didn't declare something in here that was causing it to crash. So I'll look into that.
So David, so this this plugin, or I guess this tow file, comes with a bunch of pre-made like FAUST code things.
Yeah.
Okay, this is cool. I got to look into this. This looks great.
Yeah.
And is this gonna be like? Is there any of the audio analysis stuff that you were talking about in here?
Yeah. Well, here's a basic kind of audio analysis that was fun. So I need to silence it because I don't want to hear it myself. But what this one is doing is it's doing a filter bank. So here we have stereo input, and it's doing a filter bank. And if we go to the control, we can see that there are two crossover bands.
What's a filter bank? Sorry, I don't know what that
is. So like in TouchDesigner, a very common thing is to like turn it into a spectrogram, right? And then you would like, if I go, I actually have the spectrogram here. So if I
like an audio spectrum chop.
Yeah. Oops. It is. Where did I put it? Here. The audio. This node here is the audio spectrogram. So here, if I copy this and I plug it in over here,
right,
we're going to get the loudness, or not the. Yeah, it's essentially like a spectrogram view. So over here, this is the loudness of the low frequencies, and over here is the loudness of the high frequencies. So it's common in TouchDesigner for maybe someone to use this node, and then you would use like a trim chop, and you could isolate the different sections that you want to look at. But if I kind of look at the cost of this, it's kind of high, but maybe it's because other stuff is going on in my project. This node, this audio spectrum node. But a different way to do it is to set up audio filtering, in which you define crossover bands. And so everything below 500 hertz is going to kind of end up in the first two channels. But then between, if I change this back to 500, everything between 500 to 3000 hertz is going to end up in this middle band. And then everything above 3000 is going to end up in the third band up here. And there's a blurriness. There's like an overlap that is involved. It's not like an absolute hard cutoff that you could achieve with the spectrum that I showed you down here. But it's pretty cool to look at. Like here we have, our stereo input. And now what we see here pretty cheaply, if we look at the cost of this node, it's cheaper than the audio spectrogram. But if we look at it, we can kind of see that the low frequencies are showing up in the first two channels, the mids are here, and then the highs are down here. And then if we look at it one more time, it's actually quite pretty here to look at too. Like the red and the yellow is the low frequency, and it's like this is going back to like the Albanoto, or I forget, was it Carson Nicolai who did a TouchDesigner performance in which he is very actively showing you his TouchDesigner network editor. That's like a totally classic performance that people should check out on Vimeo. So yeah. So anyway, doing stuff with Faust is both efficient, elegant, fun, useful, all of those adjectives. And
Wow, there's
so
so many
check out
examples that
check
come with
out
this. This is
yeah, check
awesome.
out the examples, and then also check out that Faust tutorial, because I put a good amount of love into that tutorial to teach
Totally.
Faust kind of from A to Z.
Totally. There's I think the biggest, not the biggest, but what a big thing now is audio analysis. Like Tox's people releasing tools and stuff like that. There was just one that was just released by they are called Sarv. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They released an audio reactive engine, Tox, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I haven't had a chance to dive deeper into it. I'll just send it to you here. But it's yeah, I think this is like something that people really are needing. Like everybody has their kind of like techniques of how to, like you said, like isolate or get like the different spectrums, but the built-in palette tools for audio analysis are not so great and a little bit outdated, and they're expensive. But yeah, it's like we should be in a place where it's like, if I want to isolate the kick or the, whatever, the hi-hats or something, or the core, it should be easy. It should be kind of simplistic in that sense. So I think these kind of tools, I wish people would build upon these tools and build more custom kind of operators to be able to do these type of things cheaply and more efficiently. So hopefully somebody much more smarter than me will watch this and take it and do it.
Yeah, and I get that this is also like has a learning curve, because it's a new language, Faust, and also it's
Right.
a new domain too. But I feel like signal processing is really beautiful and
Mm.
totally worthy of everyone's like of being like a secondary interest of a lot of people in the touch designer community. So I feel like if you're a little curious about this, just dive in. And the Faust community is really great, especially on Discord or on GitHub. And so I think we're all very welcome to learners and new contributors. So get involved.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. David, was there anything else you want to show us here before we dive into the
Um,
second
that's
portion?
that's all. That's well. I have some
Oh,
other things
ooh,
open. These are just
ooh,
related
show
to.
us.
So I did this winter session related to. I did one winter session on Faust.
Mm-hmm.
I really stretched myself thin this past winter. So I did one winter session on Faust. That was like 5 days of Faust and using the guitar pedals.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did about 4 days of Touch Designer, in which I totally taught an intro to Touch Designer course, like for over 4 days,
Hell
two
yeah.
hours a day. And so I didn't actually. I made a lot of material, and I part of that material was related to this tic tac toe example that maybe people should check out on the forums, because I had this discussion on the forums about like, let's make a really elegant solution to tic tac toe. Like, what's your design pattern for that? And what ultimately came out of that discussion was a media pipe project that I did that has really good
Mm-hmm.
scene transitions.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very mindful of how it transitions from one state to another, and gives the designer opportunities to like respond to all those events in a very controlled way. So I think that if I wanted to plug another project, it would be to check out go to the tic tac toe discussion on the forums, and check out that discussion and check out the associated toe files that and especially the media pipe project that I shared there, because I think it's an elegant solution. But here I just have more. These are some of the toe files that I was that I constructed. These are
Nice.
reconstructions of Bees and Bombs by Dave White. So I saw them on Twitter, and I was like, oh, I'm going to reconstruct that on Twitter or in Touch Designer, and hopefully I'm going to show. I'm gonna like show the intro course how to make these, but ultimately I didn't have time to do this because we were doing too much fun stuff involving
These
media
are
pipe and
great.
other Touch Designer concepts. This one is a total classic Beast and
I
Bob's
love
one.
it.
But I think that another fun exercise for
Ooh, I
myself is
love
that
that one.
oh yeah, if I find the time to pull myself away from like my FAUST and machine learning PhD project, it would be to redo these things, but with pops. And that would be really fun. Okay, while I'm plugging, I want to plug one more thing, which is that the phaser, phaser. If I go to phaser and I go to operator snippets, I hope that everyone has fun with the phaser pop. So here is phaser as GLSL and phaser GLSL transition. So this is the best one, I think. So here, this is cool where you can say that this is our phaser input and this is our animation that's happening. So we're transitioning from our jelly beans into our sky, and the transition is happening according to our phase map here. And if I go here and I change this U edge parameter, if I change it to 0.5, then the local differences in the animation become less strong. And if I change it to 1, they become even less strong. So this like gradual like checkerboard animation is still occurring, but with kind of less intensity. And if I make it very extreme, like 0.01, you can see there's this very checkerboard effect. But what's cool is that when this value that you see up here is 0, it's going to be exactly, I can't pause it because it's in the op snippets. I'll have to undo it up here. So if I make this value 1, then we get exactly the right image. But if I make the value 0, we get exactly the left image. And so regardless of me changing this value of the U edge parameter of 0.5, it doesn't matter as so long as I'm at one of these boundary positions of either being this value being 0 or this value being 1. And so in terms of pops, I think that the phaser pop is hopefully something that people have a lot of fun with, because what you will do is you'll have an attribute, and the attribute will be your so-called phase, and then you will use that phase attribute with the phaser chop to apply like local deformations. So let's talk about like a point cloud. Yeah, so
go between
if
like a cube and a sphere or something like that.
Yeah, if I had a point file in, yeah, I shouldn't be editing within the I shouldn't be editing within the op snippets. That's a no-no. Never do that. View as points. So here, this is our thing. What you could imagine is, what if I want this sphere to move to the right, but I want the bottom of the sphere to move to the right before the top of the sphere moves to the right. That is essentially the same thing as what is going on in this thing, where we're saying, I want, the bright spots of this image to control which parts transition into the sky before the jelly bean. But in terms of like particle things, what you do is, you would say my phase is related to my y-axis. And you can normalize that with pops very easily. So if you normalize your y position to be between 0 and 1, here it's like -1 to 1. But if you have something that normalizes it between 0 and 1, you say that's my phase. And now you take that phase attribute and you wire it into all of these cool downstream pop operators, and you can have the amount of transformation be tied to the phase thing using the phaser pop. So I'm sorry I don't have a clean pop example to show you right now with the phaser pop, but I just wanted to plug that because I'm always on my soapbox about pops. So that's all.
Nice. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Yeah, it's exciting to I think everybody's super excited to just jump into pops. And I really think now, like we were talking about before, like having the advent of all the people that write to do tutorials and stuff like that coming into the mix is quite exciting, and it's gonna explode. I mean, it already has. It's been 3 days and there's already like 15 tutorials out. So that's like, it's pretty great.
And on the forums, it's wonderful that there's all of the existing prior discussions on pops
right
are
now it's
public
open
on the forums. So just dive in and be like, oh my god, there's a whole sea of useful discussion of pops. It's like all that learning material is there.
Totally. Well, David, thank you so much for sharing with us your FAUST projects and your touch designer stuff, I can urge everybody. It's not even a difficult thing. Go check out David's Instagram. Check out his GitHub. There's so many repositories there that are like, I mean, just quickly, we got Touch Designer shared. We got FAUST. We got Chuck Designer. We got the Phaser Chop. We got the PyTorch Chop. We got the Smooth Steps Chop, Matrix Chop, RealSense Chop. I mean, come on. You can't get better than that. There's so many things there. So definitely go check it out and join the David Braun train or FAUST. Sorry. And so we're getting into our last portion here. I would definitely want to be cautious of your time, but there's a few things that I want to talk to you about that I think would be some interesting kind of discussions. We did speak about this before, and I don't know if there's anything else to add to it, but I feel like you are a good person to kind of give us a more in-depth explanation of the whole, node-based visual scripting versus traditional scripting. And I could preface it like from my personal experience, like I am very dumb when it comes to math and anything to do with, coding or anything like that. And but over the past 3 years, because of the advent of LLMs, I've managed to teach myself like very basic scripting. And I guess even before that, just getting deeper into visual-based, node-based systems, you kind of start understanding, okay, what is a reference? What is a call? What is an expression even? And then you kind of, like, when you start looking at script, you're like, oh, I kind of recognize what that means from node-based systems. And then starting to teach myself scripting through LLMs, I really had like a little bit of a jump start of being able to understand how to conceptualize, scripting. The biggest, I don't know how to say it in English, but when what's the term, like when the light bulb comes up, was that scripts aren't read from top to bottom. I never understood that. I always thought it's like, this is the first function, this is the second function, this is the third, and I never like that kind of concept of like there's really no, it's not linear, like this can call this and this can go back to this and back and forth. That really kind of like obfuscated the idea of like nodes versus scripting, because nodes are also kind of like that, right? Like, yeah, they go from left to right, but they kind of don't, in a way. They can go all around and they can kind of reference and go back and forth. So anyway, like, I guess the question, or maybe like the topic, could be just kind of like, for people that are getting into one versus the other, or for people that are interested in one, what are some takebacks or takeaways from your experience of, going into this world of computer science and being at such a high level, but also being so privy to node-based systems?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like everyone should just branch out. I mean, as much as I love TouchDesigner, it shouldn't be the only thing that you do. And that I don't think anyone at at Derivative should be mad at me for saying that. Like, just be a well-rounded person.
So.
Yeah. If I continue to talk about the languages and frameworks that I've used, another is D3, a JavaScript language, a framework, like that's for interactive visualizations. And a big concept in that is like callbacks and anonymous callbacks. And it's kind of like a functional paradigm of JavaScript. In FAUST, it's actually a functional language, and a common feature of functional languages is that you can actually declare functions out of order. And there's also something called pattern matching. And so these concepts are some of them are only common to certain kinds of languages. And so if you can't wrap your head around, I have to declare things in order, then maybe start having fun with languages in which you can declare functions out of order. Like that's really fun and cool too. And FAUST is one of those languages. So I think awesome. In terms of visual scripting, I think that the number of visual or like node-based systems that I've used is actually not that plentiful. I would say that there's Chords Composer and TouchDesigner, and that might be all for the node-based.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. let's see. And then I think that understanding the whole like cook order thing is a
Mm.
useful skill in TouchDesigner.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
Mm-hmm.
want to understand what causes things to cook and why. I feel like in a funny example of this is Max MSP. So
Mm-hmm.
I at one point I wanted to learn Max MSP, but this was after knowing TouchDesigner. So I went to Max MSP after knowing TouchDesigner for like a couple of years, and there are these concepts of hot inlets and cold inlets,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also this concept of cooking in a visual way. So the kind of
Mm-hmm.
cook order is kind of like a left to right and top to bottom thing. And so what's really confusing about Max MSP, and I may be wrong about this because it was true a few years ago, is that the cook order, so-called cook order, to make the TouchDesigner comparison, is actually uh, tied to the visual layout of where you place the nodes. So like to me, being a TouchDesigner user, I'm like, this is insane. Like I do not want the physical location of a node to
To matter.
involve its cook order.
Right. Right. Right.
Like,
Right. 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 Right.
I
So funny.
maybe Maximus people like that, but I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
So that was a huge turnoff from Maximus P.
So interesting. There's I don't know if you're familiar with Notch, which is like another visual scripting kind of like more geared towards 3D, but they have this I also found it super annoying that's like the nodes, the hierarchy of like a top to bottom was the like blending, or not the blending, but like the what is it called, like when you have like an image over an image, the order, like the order
Comp?
of, yeah, like the composition or order of like what's being rendered first was based on the order of the of the nodes, the hierarchy. And I always found that so unintuitive, because it's like I don't want to build my node networks based on that. I want my node networks to be completely not positional based. But I think that, yeah, I think it's like I guess the users of those systems, you kind of like learn to work within those kind of environments, right?
Yeah, those people are reading it like a document, like left to right, top to
Yes.
bottom. So they're like,
Right.
that makes sense to them. But for me,
Right.
being a TouchDesigner user, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I also I wonder what your take on this is. It's like, and maybe it's like a little bit of a open, but I always tell people that if they're interested in visual scripting, TouchDesigner is such a great place to start, because TouchDesigner doesn't really like hold your hand. Like if you want to build something in TouchDesigner, or if you want to have a concept in TouchDesigner, you kind of have to build it. And when you build it, you're kind of learning the very baseline or simple aspects and concepts of scripting in general, but also of like how to how to interact with nodes, and parameters. And like Notch is great. I really, I shit on it a lot, but I actually do appreciate it a lot. But it's like everything's built for you. Like all the nodes are kind of like families, and they're built for you, and you kind of like things just kind of work together, and that's great. But if you learn Notch, you're not necessarily going to understand concepts of like what it means to add two textures together, or what it means to change the value of a range of a texture or something like that, and like how important that can be to build something. And I feel like TouchDesigner is so kind of like, there is a much bigger learning curve, right? You kind of have to teach yourself how to do conceptual things and basic things. And also it can be very frustrating when you're like, okay, I just want something to like look pretty, you have to actually like build it. But I think the value of it is so powerful, because you now understand concepts that, that are translatable. Like when I went to blueprints in Unreal, which is like a totally different, like, understanding of nodes, because there's like 10,000 different nodes, and each one has like a very specific operation. But when I wanted to like do operational values, or like math value, or like math operations, I had the structural understanding from TouchDesigner to be able to do that, and like the conceptual value.
Yeah, I'll do another humble brag thing that I was trying to avoid here. But
No, don't
so
avoid
here's
it.
my humble brag, which is that I never took a computer graphics course at Brown. I took a computer animation course. And so you wouldn't really say that I learned like computer graphics or compositing or anything there. But I ended up I had to be a TA for my second year in the PhD here. And I, of course, TA computer graphics, because there isn't necessarily like an audio machine learning course here. But I'm TAing graphics because it's kind of my professional experience. And as I'm a TA for the course and I'm like preparing the like lecture notes and stuff, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, it's like I feel so like just like grateful or something that I learned this stuff just by being a TouchDesigner user. Like it had something to do with like TouchDesigner itself had something to do with me learning these like core computer graphics concepts. And so, you know, even though I didn't take an undergrad course on computer graphics, I feel like it was that like education for me, and it made me capable of being a TA. So that's what I find so cool about the TouchDesigner experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, good way of putting it into that sense. And yeah, I think it's like I kind of see it time and time again whenever I speak to TouchDesigner people. People come from such different backgrounds and such different, disciplines. And when they find TouchDesigner or they get deeper into it, it like all amalgamates into like a joint, like almost like we're all learning the same language all of a sudden. And this computer scientist, this mathematician, this artist, this architect can like kind of coalesce into this one environment and speak the same language and kind of like utilize things. And there's not like a lot of things like that are really like that. Like there are, 3D generalists that can kind of like all come coalesce in like Blender or whatever, but, or like maybe like, whatever, like in virtual production, there's like all these like, different modules that you can kind of, if you understand this thing and you understand this thing and you understand this thing, you all come from like different backgrounds, but we all do virtual production together. But it's like not an environment, there's no like actual software environment, that we can all kind of join. And I just love that about TouchDesigner. I actually haven't even done this. So yeah, exactly. So okay, so shifting a little bit into like a more esoteric, and I don't know you well enough to like really know what your take on this is going to be, but I'm interested. As an audio engineer, as a computer scientist who is focused on audio, and like the idea of frequency or the concept of a frequency, do you have some sort of, and I know that this word is very triggering for people, but do you have some sort of spiritual connotation with frequency, or like we don't even have to go to the spiritual aspect, but just kind of like how frequency affects nature and how nature is affected by frequency and these kind of like concepts? Do you think about them? What is your take on them? And please feel free to take it wherever you want.
Personally, no. I guess the answer would be
Fair
no.
enough.
But
Fair
I will
enough.
say that something about just synthesizers is very appealing to me in a way. Like I think there's something kind of visceral about it, and it has to do with something about our biology. On this subject, the human ear, it has this like shape like a what do you like a snail?
Conical?
Yeah, there's a word.
Like a snail, yeah.
No, the cochlea, right? Cochlea is
Yeah.
the word. Sorry.
Cochlea.
And it does a kind of Fourier transform. This is like people have figured this out, like the neuroscientists, where the different parts of the cochlea are like processing audio differently. So like one section is the low frequencies, and the other So I think that what would make sense would be that the outer part should be processing the high frequencies, because those would be filtered first. So like in a room, when you hear an echo, it's going to do a kind of dampening effect. And so as something like audio hits the wall and bounces back, it's going to have like a low pass filter applied to it. So it has hit a material that material has applied a kind of dampening effect, and then what you hear in the reflection is actually like a low pass reflection of that audio. So what the human ear is doing is the outer part of that cochlea is hearing the high frequencies, but as the sound pressure goes into the ear and bounces around this inward spiral, the low frequencies remain, and so what the human ear is doing is a kind of natural Fourier transform, and so maybe find some scientific article about this, but I find that very interesting. That the human ear has evolved in a way to like do a very mathematical process. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that a more common example of this is that in computer vision, there are the so-called shoot, I should know this better, cones and tubes,
Okay.
right? And so what the eye is doing is that what people think the neurons that are closest to the eye are doing are these
Mm-hmm.
kind of edge operations,
Mm-hmm.
where in TouchDesigner there isn't there an edge top, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
edge top, you can do like a vertical edge, and you can do a vertical edge and a horizontal edge. And
Mm-hmm.
so what people think the neurons closest to the eye are doing are these kinds of very low level feature processes where the neuron is
Mm-hmm.
responding if both of its neighbors are dark, or both of its left and right neighbors are bright because they're like
Mm-hmm.
receiving light, but both of its
Right.
edge top and bottom are dark.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happens, this neuron fires, and so that neuron is
Mm-hmm.
serving the role of being a an edge detector of a kind of vertical edge, and other neurons are serving the role of being horizontal edge detectors. And
Hmm.
so I think just on the topic of, I wouldn't, I think I'm going very hardcore biology here in terms
No,
of,
no, this is great.
and
This is
I'm
very,
not
very
going to,
interesting.
I'm not going the spirituality route,
He
but
is
I just
fine.
think that in terms of the discussion of like frequency and our kind of
Mm-hmm.
meaning of it and how we
Mm.
respond to it, I just think that there's something beautiful about the um, biological evolution of humans that has allowed us
Totally.
to respond to different frequencies.
Totally. And it's like that lovely chicken or the egg kind of situation of like, are the sounds, are the frequencies of the sounds of reality or nature, shifting our evolution, or is our evolution kind of being able to process those things that already exist? I always love that kind of idea of like, there's no answer, right? It's like just kind of a discussion, but it's just fascinating because evolution is so tied into our experience of like how we, why does white noise make us feel so great, or why is sound such like an important aspect of like memory, or these kind of ideas.
Yeah,
And I think you mentioned the way that our ear is shaped. I think it's so tied in. It's got to be, right. Like,
yeah.
some sort of evolutionary trait of like, okay, well, let's make that more exact. Let's make the sounds better. I want to be able to differentiate between a lion and a gazelle or whatever it is, or understanding the rumbling of a thunder, versus the rumbling of bees or something like that. So it's very.
Yeah, and how cool is it that our ears, we can tell whether something is above us or below us.
The spatial is
No,
crazy.
but like obviously, if something is to my left, I can hear that it's hitting my left ear before my right ear. But isn't it
Right.
cool that I can hear that something is like directly above me
Totally.
versus directly below me? Like something
Totally.
beautiful
Totally.
about all of our hearing abilities.
Totally. So do you subscribe to any kind of like idea of frequency being some sort of clearly not godly or anything like that, but do you subscribe to it being like some sort of like heightened dimension or something like this, or like that it can exist in a different dimension, or something like along those lines? And like there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just like really interested
Yeah,
in your take on it.
I mean, I'm just curious where like AGI is going to take us on this
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Like, who knows what kind of radical scientific discoveries can be made in the next 10 years or so,
Mm,
to give a long horizon, 10 years.
mm,
So maybe we'll discover some very interesting things related to frequency.
mm.
I'll grant you that.
Okay. Any thoughts? Any ideas that you have?
um, I don't know. I'll keep an open mind for it in the future. Yeah.
Okay. Very diplomatic response. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Okay. You don't want to get in trouble from your scientific friends. I understand.
No,
I'm joking.
I think that uh, on that topic, the kind of the brain is essentially very very complicated. So uh, I'm open to its mysteries.
Totally. Okay. Well, kind of jumping on that a little bit more, the flow state, right, is something that I think is a very kind of like something that I'm sure as a coder you can kind of relate to, and definitely as like a audiovisual artist you can relate to, and I think that there's so many different takes on what that actually is and how it is relatable, the biological aspect of it, the more esoteric aspect, the dimensional aspect. For sure, there's so many different takes in it. What is your take on the flow state, and where does it meet you, and how does it affect your life?
It's hugely important for me. Like I'm definitely aware of it after it happens, and not aware of it as it's happening, and that's like
Mm,
the a great thing. And sometimes it sometimes I don't need to be like listening to music to do it. Sometimes I'm just coding and I'm just very focused on what I'm doing, and sometimes I am listening to music and coding at the same time. Um, so I think, yeah, it should just be involved in one's activity very deeply, and to have that flow state is very magical.
mm, I love it.
You know,
Do you notice different musics bring you into different states?
um, I think that I listen to a lot of different genres of music. So sometimes I'm listening to like Motown and like soul music, and I just put on a playlist of of that, and that is kind of a little more distracting because it has lyrics, and a lot of the songs are
Right.
short, which is nice.
Mm,
But the lyrics all involve like an element of humor uh, and storytelling. Um,
mm,
like they're and they're romantic and stuff, and so I can kind of put those on and kind of just like be like having fun to it. And then other times I can be listening to jungle and get into a flow state, or
nice.
maybe like a little more of an ambient artist,
Hmm.
or electronic house music. Or like mashup stuff. Like I can get into anything that I like, and be in a flow state.
Totally. I love that. I used to, it's so long ago now, but I used to write, when I was studying film, I would write a lot of screenplays. And the thing that really got me in it was classical, like music, like Mozart, or even whatever, like just whatever was on some playlist, because there's no lyrics, and it's not like electronic music is so emotional, like, like not emotional, but it's visceral, like you feel, and you're like in it, and you're there. And the classical music is like, the structure of it is so, um, like it's like almost heightened, where there's like a very clear like beginning, middle, and end to the classical music, the structure of it, but it's so kind of like abstract in some way, because it's just like these like journeys. It really helped me write
Yeah,
like short stories and screenplays. I don't know why. It was a very funny thing. I don't listen to it anymore, because it doesn't I don't enjoy it as much when I'm like, touch designering, or coding or anything. But back then when I was writing, because I think the words, like if I would listen to music with lyrics, totally would fuck up my writing. And electronic music was too, I don't know, there was something about it that didn't get me into that state, but classical music got me there. So funny.
yeah. I forgot to say jazz too. I listen to a ton of jazz, like
Jazz,
modal
great.
jazz, post bop. I'm listening to
Totally.
a lot of Hiromi Uehara right now. She has a new
Nice.
album.
Nice. That's awesome.
Um, on
Jazz is going to be
classical, I
great because it's
list.
so, sorry, no, please.
Oh, Steve Reich is the closest I get to classical, like music for
Okay.
18 musicians.
Nice.
I
Nice.
listen to
Nice.
that.
Nice. Jazz is going to be great because jazz is so eclectic, right? It's so like so much, it's the same idea of like that there's so much structure, but it's so broken up, and it's so abstract, like it's so non-structural, yet there is such a structure to it that it's going to fire your brain in such an interesting way. um cool, 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 cool.
And I think it's rewarding to listen to the same song like and know it well, because like at the first time you hear a jazz piece, it may be overwhelming and chaotic, but you can acclimate yourself to it through, you know, like enjoying that song over a year, like, and listening to it once a month, like
Mm,
not as a ritual, but like I'm just saying that like as you get to know a certain jazz piece more, I have a more connection to it.
interesting. Yeah, I guess you kind of like start to familiarize yourself with where things are going, and that structure becomes more like obvious maybe, and then you can almost appreciate it more. Okay, you mentioned Pink Floyd a bunch. I love Pink Floyd. What's your favorite Pink Floyd album? This is like just a
Uh,
interested.
Honestly, just Dark Side of the Moon, of course. And
Okay, classic.
I should know more of the albums, but like Dark Side of the Moon is just such like a love of mine. So
I love it.
I've heard all of the other albums, but like the one I play is Dark Side of the Moon.
Interesting. Mine's Animals. I could listen to that album a million times.
Yeah.
But Dark
Oh
Side was like the
man.
first one. The first one that I remember my cousin, must have been like 11 or something, and he's like, "You got to listen to this." And I grew up
You
in
know
like a
what?
super. Yes, what?
Yeah. Okay, so you said Animals, right? So I listened to Animals a handful of months ago, and I think that there's a track, we should look it up, in which
Okay.
there's this bass riff, and I mean I don't
Dogs.
know if you'll look it up now, but there's a bass riff in Animals on some track. I forgot which one, and it sounds exactly like an Ariana Grande song.
Really?
It's like
Oh, it's like one of
yeah, it's
those.
like it's
That's
maybe
awesome.
God is a Woman, or it's another
Okay.
Ariana Grande song that's a good one.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
I like one of my most like joyful moments in life is um when I hear a song and I'm like, oh, that sounds so much like some other thing, and then I struggle with it for like a minute, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's it, that's the one. It sounds like Ariana Grande.
I love that. That's so funny. I just did a search: Ariana Grande, God is a Woman, Animals, Pink Floyd. Features a music video that includes a bizarre moment that's searching. No, there's no connection. It's just in your head, David. I'm sorry.
Uh,
Or you discovered something that nobody has discovered yet. So we'll have to see. I love
No,
it.
I'm certain. I mean, it's like it's not a sample, but it's a reinterpretation.
Of that bass line. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, like that music from that era is so like they were just figuring all this shit out, right? Like at such a fast pace, right? And all of a sudden you have all these like sounds and concepts in music that were never explored before. Or maybe they were explored, but in a totally different way. And I think that must have created some sort of like rift or some sort of like like you said, everything's a remix kind of idea of like now we're kind of like at the post of like music where like music is like kind of not as good as it used to be, right? And there's like a reason for that, like film is the same, like you look at all the classics and all movies today utilize shots, movements, story aspects of things from, the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s of movies. So it's like, everything is kind of that remix in that sense. It's very interesting. I think music is probably even more so because of sampling, right? It's like such a big thing.
yeah. On the Dark Side of the Moon, the producer was Alan Parsons, and he was really young at the
Mm,
time. He was
mm.
like 24 or something, and
Right.
he had this gig of like being the studio engineer for Pink Floyd, who were
Mm,
also probably young at the time.
yeah.
But he came up with these creative ideas, and like I don't know if he was the person behind the idea, but one example that I like to tell people about is on the track "Us and Them." Is
Mm.
that the vocals go us, and then there's the repeat in the with an echo
Us,
where it goes
us, us,
us,
us,
and it's
and
also like bouncing between the left and the right channels. But
mm.
then what happens is the next word is and them, but then only the word them is repeated. So it's
The and isn't echoed.
and them, and so that's called like a reverb throw. Or
Mm.
what Alan Parsons is doing is he's sitting at the mixing desk and he has the return track of the echo, and when us when right before us is set, or sorry, and them is said, so and is said, and then he raises the levels, and so that catches only the word them, so the them goes through the echo
Mm.
chain. And
Interesting.
honestly, I heard this like when, like when I was young, and it stood out to me, and I realized like, oh, like in order to do that, it's not just a repeat. It's something where you just blindly send the signal
Right.
into the return track.
You had to
There's
actually
artistic
like,
intent in which
yeah,
you say I'm going to animate this,
that's
and I'm going
crazy.
to raise the level of the signal being sent to the return track. And that this technique of a reverb throw shows up all the time in popular music, and it's like common in hip hop and rap, where it's like someone's going to do like a rap line, and then only the last word is repeated.
Is repeated,
Um,
yeah. Interesting.
by some echo or maybe like a double take. But like, I just wonder I wish someone had like a deep dive in what the genesis of this like reverb throw technique is, to say like, did
Interesting.
Alan Parsons like come up with it in Us and
Right.
Them, or like who
Right.
was doing this beforehand?
There's a great documentary. I think it's called. Oh shit! I'll find it. But it's about. It's about the dark side. But there's like a. It's like mainly about. The Great Gig in the Sky. That whole that the woman singing. Have you heard that
Yeah,
story?
Donna maybe.
Yeah, where she was like the real
It was
person
the
that was
first
supposed to
take.
do it didn't come, and then and then
Yeah,
it was like some random person, almost like not random, but it was like somebody that was just hanging out, and they're like, "Can you try it?" She's like, "Yeah, I'll try it," and it was the first take. It's like that is just so crazy to me. Like when you hear that, you're like, "Okay, this is like the most beautiful, perfect, like intonation, and everything's like perfect," and like they just did it willy nilly, like it's just so crazy. I love those little rock stories.
I did a master's at Stanford at the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics, and they have top of the line recording studios and facilities. And I kind of saw them, but I actually, to my regret, didn't prioritize making much use of them myself, because I was just like coding VSTs and FAUST on my laptop, and I wasn't like I really missed my opportunity to make the most out of one of the best academic recording centers. But Princeton has some stuff that I should make more use of.
Yeah, I'm sure there must be some, we've talked about frequencies before, like those physical devices that are so like, like, okay, not that the digital devices aren't releasing a frequency or kind of contemplating a frequency, but like the physical devices are so much more, quote unquote, akin to like natural things, right? Because they're using like transistors and like things that are more, I don't know, natural. I guess they're not really natural either. Like the real natural would be a guitar, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
But like,
Well, actually, here we have the Princeton Laptop Orchestra, which maybe claims to be the first laptop orchestra in the world. Stanford being the second. Stanford being derivative of it, Slork. But here we have a bunch of synthesizers, and so I have played with some of the modular synths here, and we've got Euro rack modules that I've played with a
nice.
little bit. So yeah, having that tangibility is definitely fun.
Yeah, it must be very like eye opening or ear opening, I guess, in that sense. Okay, so we're getting to the end here. I have one more topic of discussion, and we did touch on it a little bit, but I just want to kind of expand it a little bit, like the interactive and immersive concept of of art, or I guess maybe like the interactive and immersive concept of connecting with people and audiences, and how that a lot of times the conversations that I'll have with immersive and interactive artists, they bring up the idea of like, my art piece doesn't really exist until somebody interacts with it, or my expression is only like a small fraction of what the expression of the art piece is until somebody interacts with it, and it becomes like this very interesting feedback loop of like the audience is my expression, vice versa, etc. Can you give us like any insight into this, or any personal experiences with this, and just kind of like what it means to you to have this platform of interactive and immersive media?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you make a Connect installation, it's not art until someone is using it, until a visitor, an audience person is going up and interacting with it. So,
Right.
in that sense, it is kind of an unfinished art experience until someone is actually using it. But um, I think that there's still something to be said of just the artistic and engineering and effort that went into producing it, even if no one uses it. So I think that, I guess, having people uh, use it does change it.
Totally, totally. And it's kind of like almost like you as a tool maker or a person who creates, plugins and tools in somewhat is similar, right? Like the tool is one thing, but now how is somebody going to use the tool? And then I'm sure you've been surprised by all the different ways that people use your tools and maybe even ways that you couldn't even imagine, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So here another example on this about how TouchDesigner has evolved over the past 10 years or so. A lot of nodes now, this was introduced a handful of years ago, let's say maybe 3 years ago, where the number of passes on the node is actually a parameter that is exposed. Are you
Mm.
aware of this?
Yeah,
So like on
yeah,
the
that's right.
transform top,
Hmm.
uh, sorry, yeah, the
Interesting.
transform top, there's a relatively new parameter that controls the number of passes. And so
Hmm.
you can do compositing, you can do like copy stamp paste compositing with the transform top. Or even with maybe the over top and the composite top by controlling the number of passes. And
Hmm.
so one of my, like the very first talks that I contributed to my TouchDesigner repository was this thing that was meant to recreate the album art for Tame Impala, where you're looking at this landscape image and there's this circular image that is
Okay.
stamped and shrinking into the vanishing point.
Right.
And I used
Hmm.
GLSL in order to make that. But in fact, because of the transform top's new feature where you can control the number of tops, I
Passes.
wonder if I can. I think I have it open because I was. I may have to share the screen again in order to
Please.
do it. So, so
With pleasure.
uh, so yeah, I think I have it open because yes, I have it open. Let's do the screen share. So, um, uh, entire screen. So because of the transform top, it's actually here. Let's. This is the image art that we're trying to reconstruct here. This is the Tame Impala album art. So if I go to images and Tame Impala inner speaker. So
Hmm.
this is the art, right?
Hmm.
This is like a 2011 2010 album, and this is an image from the U.S. Forest Preserve or something funny. So in order to do this, if I get rid of the nodes that are like distracting us, I'm gonna just delete them because what we want is just this finished product, right? I'm gonna get rid of this thing, and actually, yeah. So there's a hole inside here.
Hmm.
So to fill in that hole, you just need an extra pass, and you just do an over at the end.
Right.
But actually, what I'm doing here is uh, we start with our image. I don't know why. What's this purpose of this? This switch doesn't matter at all. Let's get rid of the switch. So I'm going to delete this to clean up the node. So I don't need this stuff anymore. So we take our circle, or we take our image. We use the circle to cut a hole in the center of it, and then we do an under top. This is the under node.
Hmm.
And the magic here is that on the common page, we have passes set to 10.
Hmm.
And
So
so
just doing the same thing
then,
over and over again.
yeah, and so we're doing a scale operation. And we can even do a little subtle shift here. So if I change this to 0.05, it's still going to look good, right?
Hmm.
So that's
Awesome.
cool. And then it kind of breaks the horizon effect, though. We're getting like a weird,
Right.
like peninsula, ocean, something. But and then all you have to do is composite it one more time with the thing down here. And so um, this is this this concept of like having the multiple passes is a really elegant feature that TouchDesigner added so that you don't have to write the GLSL shader that I
To do it.
wrote a long time ago in order to do this kind of thing. And I think that just like this, what I've demonstrated here and how you can do a cool effect in just a handful of nodes, like look at this little network that we have. It's essentially just a circle, an under, and an over, right?
Hmm.
These are the core nodes: circle, under, and over, and we've achieved this classic, album art that everybody loves.
Hmm.
But like what pops are this, but 100-fold, you know.
Hmm.
So I'm
Hmm.
really excited to see people do amazing stuff with pops. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that that little demonstration. And I've really enjoyed talking to you. You're very fascinating, and it's great to get your insight into things, and kind of see your excitement for Pops is infectious, and I know that everybody's going to be very excited to hear your take on it all. Thank you so much for coming. Is there anything else you want to share or plug or anything before we go?
No, that's all. And it was a lovely and joyful discussion with you. So thanks.
Wow, what an episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Manda Smash for the intro and outro music. Thank you to Sophie Holder for the amazing internship helping us with all the episodes. And thank you to the guest for coming on and spending time with us. See you next week.